Dust floated in the air, golden and heavy, catching the last scraps of Thursday sunlight that slipped in through the workshop windows. I kept sanding the walnut desk, slow and steady, feeling the wood warm up under my hand. 220 grit. The grain opened up cathedral arches I'd spent 3 days teasing out of rough boards. My shoulders ached. I'd been at it since 6 in the morning. 15 hours of standing, shaping, breathing in that fine powder that settled everywhere. In my hair, deep in my sleeves, in every crease of my clothes. The studio smelled like linseed oil and fresh curls of wood once. That smell meant hope. Now it just meant another 16-hour day, another piece I'd have to sell for less than half its worth, just to keep the lights on and keep that ghost of a debt at bay. That's what I called it, the phantom debt. It was this shapeless weight I'd inherited, 9 years of payments for my father's mistakes. 9 years since he'd gripped his chest in our kitchen, told me the doctors were worried, told me stress could kill him, told me the company was bleeding out. I was 20 then. Still young enough to believe family was supposed to go both ways. Turns out I was wrong. I set down the sandpaper, worked the stiffness from my fingers. My calluses had their own calluses. My hands looked like they belonged to someone older, the skin split and rough no matter how much lotion I used at night. I grabbed my water bottle, took a long drink, and let my eyes drift to the white oak table in the middle of the shop. That one still stung. I'd built it 3 months ago, in a week where sleep felt impossible and the numbers in my bank account rearranged themselves into warnings: eviction, overdraft, end of the line. Building that table was therapy. Each mortise, every tenon, cut so carefully I had to be silent inside just to get it right. I branded my name, L. Vance, into the apron with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, then rubbed in 20 coats of oil until the wood glowed. Best work I'd ever done. Still couldn't sell it. Couldn't let it go. My phone buzzed on the bench. Mom. I thought about ignoring it. Honestly, I was tired enough to let it ring out of pure spite. But old habits are hard to break, and I answered before I could talk myself out of it. Hi, Mom. Leona. Her voice was flat, that careful, breathless tone she used when she was about to hand me bad news dressed up as concern. I'm glad I caught you. I wanted to talk before things get busy this weekend. Okay. I leaned on the bench, already bracing. It's about the engagement party Saturday. Your father and I have been talking, and we think it would be best if you didn't come. The words hit like a hammer. I gripped the edge of the bench. You're uninviting me. Don't be dramatic. Sienna's just so stressed with the wedding, and you know how she gets. We thought it'd be easier for everyone if you skip this one. Easier for everyone. Classic. It never meant everyone. It meant Sienna. I already bought a gift, I said, hating how small my voice sounded. That's sweet, honey, but you don't need to do that. We know things have been tough at the shop. We don't expect. The business is fine. I said it without thinking, snapping up a wall. Leona. Now her voice slid into that syrupy patience that always made me feel 12 again. Your father's heart can't take stress. You know that. If there's tension, if you and Sienna start up again, it could be dangerous for him. There it was. The heart condition. The trump card they always played when I started to push back. I shut my eyes, saw Dad 9 years ago at the kitchen table, pale, clutching his chest, Mom dialing 911. The hospital bills that came after, the specialist appointments, the meds. Except I'd never actually seen a bill. Never been to an appointment. They'd handled all that, then handed me the total, $42,000 in medical debt, plus the company's collapse. And me, desperate to keep the only family I had, said yes to all of it. I've been making payments for 9 years, I said, quiet. And we're grateful, sweetheart. But this weekend isn't about money. It's about Sienna's happiness. You get that, right? I understood plenty. I got it. My sister ended up with the bedroom everyone wanted, the one with the bay window. Me? I got the old garage, barely converted. Same story with college. Sienna's tuition, paid in full. I got, sorry, there's just not enough for both of you. When I was 22, working 16-hour days trying to make a name for myself building furniture, they called me selfish. Apparently, putting my craft before family was the problem. I understand, I said into the phone. Wonderful. I knew you would. We'll see you soon, okay? Maybe Sunday for brunch. The call ended. I just stood there in the fading afternoon light, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Eventually, I set the phone down and opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was an envelope I'd sealed 2 days ago, a check for $3,200, half the payment from a dining set commission. Money I needed for next month's rent. The card said, "Congratulations, Sienna and Adrian. Wishing you every happiness." I stared at it for a while. Then I ripped the check in half, then into quarters, then into scraps so small I couldn't tear them anymore. The pieces fluttered onto my workbench. I swept them into the trash with my hand and went back to sanding. The walnut desk still needed work. That was all I had left. The day before the engagement party, Friday morning, the Portland fog was so thick I couldn't see across the parking lot of my Southeast Industrial studio. I'd been up since 5, doing inventory and trying not to look at the calendar. 30 days left before eviction if I couldn't come up with $2,400. Might as well have been $3 million. I was rearranging my chisels when I heard car doors slam. More than one. My stomach dropped. I walked over and peered through the condensation on the window. Out in the gravel lot sat a sleek Audi, looking about as at home as a racehorse in a junkyard. 4 people got out, my mother in cream linen, my dad in a sport coat, Sienna in something white and floaty, and a tall guy in dark jeans and a charcoal Henley. Adrian, the fiancé. I'd never even met him. First, I thought about locking the door and pretending I wasn't there. Then I realized they'd already seen my truck. So I stood and watched them come closer, my mother's practiced smile, my father moving carefully, Sienna's hand tight on Adrian's arm. I opened the door before they could knock. Surprise! My mother's voice rang out, all glass and performance. "We wanted Adrian to see where you work. He's very interested in craftsmanship." Adrian stepped up and held out his hand. "Lyra, I've heard a lot about you." I doubted that, but his handshake was steady, his eyes met mine. He was handsome in a quiet way, sharp jaw, dark hair, gray eyes that looked almost silver in the morning light. He carried himself like someone used to money, but not the showy kind. "Nice to meet you," I said, and let them in. Adrian's attention went straight to the studio. He looked around at my workbenches, the tools on the walls, half-finished pieces everywhere. He noticed the Japanese pole saw, the antique hand planes lined up by size, the white oak table in the middle of the room. "This is incredible," he said, and for a second, I believed he meant it. "Where did you train?" "Here," I said. "I'm self-taught." "Really?" He walked over to the oak table, crouched down, and ran his fingers over the joinery. "These are hand-cut dovetails." "Yeah, most people use a jig for dovetails this size." The precision. He stood up, looking at me differently now. "How long have you been woodworking?" "Since I was 15. My mother jumped in, voice brittle and bright. "Lyra's always been good with her hands, very practical skills." That word, practical, made my jaw clench. Sienna shifted, eyes on the floor. My father stood by the door, arms crossed, watching like he expected something to explode. "We should let her get back to work," he said. "I'm sure she's busy." But Adrian was still looking around, genuinely interested. "Do you mind if I see the milling bay? I've always wanted to set up a shop, and I'd love to see your layout." "Adrian, honey, we really should," Sienna started. "It's fine," I cut in, surprising myself. My father's eagerness to leave made me want to draw this out. "It's through that door." I led Adrian toward Zone B, my family trailing behind like a pack of shadows. The second I opened the milling bay door, the smell hit me: raw cedar, pine, oak, all tangled together, thick and promising. Adrian followed me in, and I could see it on his face, awe, almost reverence. The place looked like organized chaos. Table saw with a long-out feed, planer, jointer, lumber stacked by species and grade. In the corner, the dust collector sat there looking half asleep, barrel half full of shavings. "Can I see how you set up your dust collection?" Adrian asked. I went over, flipped the switch. The machine roared awake, one of those grinding howls that drowns out everything else. Adrian leaned in, checking the hose connections, nodding. Behind me, I felt the shift in the air, my family. Like a storm rolling in. I turned, And there was Sienna, just a little too close, her face twisted into some desperate sweetness. Her mouth moved, but I couldn't hear her over the machine. I could read her lips, though. We need to talk. I led Sienna out to the finishing studio, leaving Adrian poking around the lumber racks. The dust collector's noise chased us, turning everything into a deep, mechanical rumble. My parents followed. My mom headed straight to the window, putting some distance between herself and whatever was about to go down. My dad took up position near the door, like he was guarding the exit. Military maneuver? I thought. They'd practiced this. Sienna grabbed my wrist. Her nails, perfect and pale pink, dug in. I need a favor, she half-shouted over the noise. For the engagement party tomorrow night. Tomorrow's Saturday, I said, not really tracking. Yes, tomorrow. Saturday night. Her grip tightened. I need a cedar archway. 7 feet tall, distressed finish, rustic but elegant. The rental company canceled yesterday. I'm desperate. I stared at her. An archway. By tomorrow morning? You build furniture all the time. Sienna, that's 30 hours of work, at least. More if you want it to actually look good. Then you'd better get started. Her voice lost the sugar, turned sharp. Unless you want everyone at my engagement party to know why you couldn't make it. The threat stung. I yanked my wrist free. What's that supposed to mean? My dad stepped in. It means we've supported you for 9 years while you played carpenter. The least you can do is help your sister on the most important weekend of her life. Played carpenter. That phrase hit hard. I looked at him, his face red, fists clenched, not a hint of the frailty he'd complained about for years. Supported me? I laughed, and it came out rough. I've been paying your debt since I was 20. I've given you everything. You've given us what you owe us. He snapped, moving closer. His face was almost purple now, veins standing out. After everything we sacrificed to raise you, to feed you, to keep a roof over your head, you think you can just... Your heart seemed strong enough to scream at me. My voice came out louder than I meant, and right then, the dust collector in the milling base spun down. The roaring faded, and my shout echoed through both rooms, sharp as a gunshot. Footsteps in the hallway. Adrian showed up in the doorway between zones, holding a Japanese chisel. He gripped it like he knew what he was doing, thumb on the brass ferrule, eyes moving from me to my parents, to Sienna, back to me. Everything okay? He asked, voice low. No one said anything for a second. My mom recovered first, forcing a smile. Just a family discussion. You know how it is. Adrian glanced at the chisel in his hand, then looked at the wall where the rest of the set hung. This is a Taisai Kurochi. Professional-grade Japanese steel. Most hobbyists don't buy tools like this. I'm not a hobbyist, I said. No, Adrian said, setting the chisel down on the workbench, careful. I don't think you are. He turned to Sienna. Your sister trained at RISD, didn't she? That hit like a depth charge. The air in the room got tight. No, Sienna said quickly. She didn't go to college. She's always worked here. I was invited to RISD, I cut in. The words surprised me, coming up from somewhere deep, somewhere I'd buried 11 years ago. Full scholarship. Furniture design. Adrian's face changed, not confusion, but recognition. Something clicked. Vance, he said slowly. Wait. Vance. I watched him work it out, saw the realization hit. Professor Evans told me about a student, Adrian went on, his voice strange now. Lyra Vance turned down a full scholarship to RISD's furniture program 11 years ago. He called it one of his biggest regrets, said he let that kind of talent slip right through his fingers. Apparently, he hung onto her portfolio for years after. The room went so quiet you could hear everyone breathing. My mother's panic was almost physical, buzzing around my head. So you were 18, Adrian said, doing the math aloud. His eyes locked on my parents. You intercepted an acceptance letter from a world-class institution. You forged a rejection. My mom stepped forward, palms up, like she was trying to calm down a wild animal. Adrian, it's complicated. Lyra had terrible anxiety back then. She begged us to help her turn down the offer. We even wrote the letter for her because she just couldn't handle it. That's not true, I said. My own voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. I never got the acceptance. Honey, you're not remembering right. No, Mom. I checked the mail every single day that spring. Nothing from RISD ever came. Adrian's face hardened. He stared at my parents with this cold, calculating look people probably use to close million-dollar deals. So, if she didn't write or sign that rejection letter, and you forged her signature on official paperwork to a federal institution, he let it hang in the air. That's mail fraud. And forgery. Federal crimes. My dad's face, bright red, suddenly went white. Now hold on. Did she sign the letter? Adrian asked, straight to the point. The silence was answer enough. My hands started shaking. I pressed my palms against the workbench, feeling the grain of the wood, trying to remember how to breathe. 11 years. 11 years thinking I wasn't good enough, that RISD had seen my portfolio and tossed it aside. 11 years of mystery debt. We did what we thought was best, Mom said, but she didn't sound convinced anymore. Lyra was so young and the program was so far away, we couldn't afford to lose her. Couldn't afford, I repeated. The words tasted like old pennies. You couldn't afford to lose my income. Dad stepped in, trying to take control. That's not fair. You have no idea what we were dealing with financially. The heart condition, I said. The one that needed 42 grand in treatment. When, exactly, did you get diagnosed, Dad? I watched him stop and do the mental math. 9 years ago, Mom said. You know that. We've talked about this. Which hospital? I asked. Which cardiologist? He hesitated again. Too long. Adrian watched all of this like someone trained to read the room. You know, he said, I grew up in a medical family. When someone has a real heart condition, they usually know their doctor's name, medications, the foods they can't eat. He looked right at my dad. What medicine are you on? Dad's jaw clenched. That's private medical information. It's also pretty easy to check, Adrian replied, already pulling out his phone. My father's a surgeon. I know exactly what real medical paperwork looks like and how easy it is to subpoena records when there's reasonable suspicion of fraud. The word fraud sucked all the air out of the room. Memory started coming back to me sharp, clicking together like a joint tightening. Dad's heart condition showed up 2 years after the RISD letter should have come. 2 years of me working 16-hour days, building that portfolio, selling my work at any fair I could get to, saving every scrap of money. Then, out of nowhere, crisis. Suddenly, I was needed. The business losses, I said slowly. The ones I've been paying off for 9 years. What really happened to the company? Mom's face twisted into this look of hurt dignity. Your father made some bad investments. It wasn't his fault the market crashed. The market crashed in 2008, Adrian pointed out, voice calm as ever. That was over a decade ago. What investments are we talking about? Sienna finally spoke up, voice paper thin. Can we please just stop? Adrian, let's go. What kind of investments, Dad? I pressed. I thought about the ledger in my drawer, the one I'd started keeping 4 years ago when the numbers stopped adding up. Because I've been paying off company debts for 9 years, and I've never seen a single piece of paperwork. No loan docs, no creditor info. Dad turned bright red again. You think you're so smart, huh? Think you're going to audit me? I'm your father. Then act like it. The words ripped out of me. Tell me the truth. For once, just tell me the truth. The silence was absolute. I could hear my heartbeat, the ticking clock, cars on the highway. Mom broke first. It was gambling, she said, barely more than a whisper. Your father had some debts. Not 42,000 less. But we needed help. And you were making money, and you thought you could take 11 years from me and just walk away. My voice had gone flat. You faked a rejection letter from my dream school. You stole my future at 18. You made up a medical emergency to trap me at 20. And over 9 years, you drained over $65,000 from me, said it was for business losses, but you were just losing at the tables. I looked at my father. How much did you actually owe? That's not how much. He muttered, 15,000, but with interest. I've paid you over 4 times that. Something inside me just snapped into place, cold and sharp and totally clear. I've been your damn ATM since I turned 20. You stole my education. You stole my 20s. Adrian stared at my parents, disgust plain on his face. This isn't just family drama. This is fraud. Tax fraud, too, if you claimed those losses on your taxes. He looked at Sienna. Did you know about this? Sienna's silence said everything. She looked pale, but there was something in her eyes. Not shock. She knew. She was in on it. You knew, I said quietly, about RISD. You knew I got in. I didn't, it wasn't my place, Sienna's words tumbled out, all tangled. You were always so intense about your woodworking, and Mom said you'd be better off at home, and you thought you could use my work to boost yourself. I moved toward the white oak table, the one from 3 months ago. Adrian frowned. What? I pointed at the table. This piece. I built it in March. Posted a photo on my almost dead Instagram because a client asked for proof I could actually build something. I turned to Sienna. And then what happened? Sienna froze. My sister, I kept going, took that photo, cropped out the background, posted it on her own Instagram, claimed she built it herself. Got 4,000 likes, a dozen commission requests. I never said I built it, Sienna stammered. You said my new piece, and so proud of this build. My voice was razor sharp. I have screenshots. Adrian was already on his phone. What's your handle? Don't. Sienna's voice went hard. Adrian, please don't. But he was already scrolling. I watched him find the post. Watched his thumb stop. Watched him zoom in. He walked over to the table, crouched, ran his finger along the heat brand burned into the wood. The L, Vance. Same table, he said quietly. Same grain, same brand mark if you zoom in on the photo. He looked at Sienna. You took credit for your sister's work. That's theft. It was just a photo, Sienna tried. It was copyright infringement and fraud. Adrian stood up. You got attention and maybe money by lying about building this. That's actionable. Sienna's face went from white to blotchy red. You're being ridiculous. It was just Instagram. Just Instagram, I repeated. Something shifted in my chest. 11 years of pressure finally letting go. You stole my work, my reputation, my clients. How many commission requests did you get from that post? I didn't take any of them. How many, Sienna? 15, she whispered. 15 people. 15 chances at a different life. That could have covered rent. Bought supplies. Given me the security I've never had. Adrian was still at the table, jaw clenched. This is museum quality, he said. The joinery alone, he stopped, straightened. You know what? I'm done. He turned to Sienna. I need to think. Panic flashed in her eyes. Adrian, no, please. This is just family stuff. It's not about us. You lied about this table. What else did you lie about? Nothing, I swear. But Sienna's mother was moving now, the mask slipping. This is your fault, she snapped at me. You couldn't leave it alone. You had to ruin everything. I ruined everything? I felt the words rise up, hot and unstoppable. You forged documents. You stole over 65 grand. You wrecked my future. And it's my fault? My dad stepped forward and, for a second, I thought he might actually hit me. His hand was up, his face twisted, and I stepped back without thinking. Adrian jumped between us so fast it barely looked real. Touch her and I'll have you arrested. This is my property, my dad shouted. Actually, I said, my voice suddenly calm, it's not. I walked to my desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out the leather ledger I'd kept for 4 years. Started it when the numbers stopped making sense, when I realized I needed to document everything. For years ago, I said, opening the book, I started tracking every payment to you, every so-called business debt, every emergency check. I flipped through the pages, columns of dates, amounts, neat little notes about what the money was for. I started saving every receipt, every bank statement, every text where you demanded cash. My mother just sat there, barely breathing. What are you doing? I'm showing you what due diligence looks like, I said. Then I found the page I wanted. Last year, I hired a forensic accountant. $1,500 I didn't have, but I needed to know if I was losing my mind. I wasn't. I turned the ledger so Adrian could see. My father claimed business losses on his taxes for 9 straight years, the same losses I kept bailing him out of, but the truth? He never had a business fail. He reported gambling debts as business losses. That's tax fraud. And the money I gave him? He never reported that as income. More tax fraud. Adrian took the ledger, his face getting hard as he read. These are federal crimes. Multiple counts. I know, I said. Then I pulled out another document, sealed in plastic. I had a real estate attorney look into something else that never sat right. This workshop, my grandfather bought it 30 years ago. When he died 15 years back, he left it to me in his will. Because I was a minor, they were able to act as custodians on the deed. The property tax bills and any correspondence went to their house. I never knew the truth. I held up the deed. My name's been the sole owner on the title since I turned 18. This has been my building for 11 years. And those property taxes you said were business expenses? I've been paying them. On my building. My mother's hands started shaking. You can't, I can. All those tired years in me just turned into stone. I own this building. I own the business. And the house you're living in? The one with the mortgage I've paid half of for 9 years? I called the bank. You're 3 months behind. You're in default. You had no right, my father started. I had every right. I've been paying your mortgage. I closed the ledger. Here's what's happening. The house goes on the market tomorrow. You've got 30 days to find somewhere else. The workshop stays with me. And every dollar you took from me in the last 9 years? I'm reporting it to the IRS as unreported income. Good luck with that. My father lunged not at me, but at the can of lacquer thinner sitting on the workbench from yesterday. But Sienna was faster. She snatched the can, her face wild, and swung it at the table, my table, the white oak one, stamped with my brand. If I can't have it, she started. I moved before I thought. Threw myself between Sienna and the table. The lacquer thinner splashed across my chest, right through my flannel. The smell hit me first, sharp, chemical, acrid. Then the burn, immediate and searing. Shit. I tore off my shirt, tossed it in the metal waste bin, buttons bouncing across the floor. Now I was standing there in my undershirt, breathing hard, the chemical fumes evaporating off my skin. It stung, but not deep. I'd moved fast enough. My hands shook, adrenaline buzzing through me. Adrian had Sienna's wrist, making her drop the can, which clanged on the concrete, the solvent pooling. That's assault, he said, and attempted destruction of evidence. He was looking at her like he didn't know her at all. Then he twisted off her engagement ring, a simple platinum band, and set it on the workbench, right by the ledger. She tried to pull away, but he was stronger. Keep it, he told me. Collateral for the damages. Have your lawyers send me the full accounting. Then he walked out, straight into the morning fog. Nobody moved. I stood there, chest burning, the sharp smell of thinner filling the room. Sienna stared at the door Adrian left through. My parents looked at each other, and I saw real fear in their faces for the first time. Get out, I said. Get out of my workshop and don't come back. My mother opened her mouth, then shut it. She grabbed her purse and walked out. My father followed, for once completely silent. Sienna lingered, her face twisted up, regret, maybe, or just realizing she'd lost something she couldn't undo. Then she left too. I stood alone in the finishing studio, surrounded by sawdust, unfinished work, and the white oak table that had suddenly become evidence in the trial of my own life. I looked at the ring on the bench. Platinum. Simple. Probably worth a couple months' rent. I picked it up, tucked it into the back of the ledger, safe for now, until I figured out what came next. I spent the rest of Friday cleaning. Not the kind of cleaning that gets things done, just mopping up spilled thinner, throwing out a ruined flannel shirt, messing around with tools that didn't actually need to be reorganized. It was all muscle memory, just enough to keep my hands busy while my brain tried to sort through the mess that had just blown up in my life. Around 4, I heard a car door slam outside. My gut reaction was pure panic. Maybe my family was back, ready for round 2. But when I peeked out, there was Adrian, leaning against his Audi. He hadn't left. Or he'd come back. Either way, he was just waiting. I stepped out into the light. The fog had finally lifted, and everything looked sharp, almost too clear, like the world was trying to show off. Adrian glanced over as I walked up. I wanted to make sure they actually left, he said. I've been sitting at the coffee shop down the road. Saw them drive off about an hour ago. I nodded, not trusting myself to say much. He kept going. I also wanted to apologize. I had no idea about any of that. If I'd known what Sienna, what your family, he stopped, shook his head. That's not quite true. I should have known. There were signs, I just ignored them. That's normal, I said. Quiet. It's easier not to see. Adrian looked over at the workshop, at the old Vance Woodwork sign. That table in there, the white oak? It's honestly incredible. Professor Evans would lose his mind if he saw it. Thanks. He nodded, serious. I meant what I said about the ring. Keep it as collateral or sell it, whatever you need. And I'll get my lawyer to handle the Instagram mess. Sienna has to issue a public correction at the very least, and you can go after damages if you want. I thought about lawyers, courtrooms, the whole circus. Just thinking about it wore me out. I just want her to leave me alone. That's fair. He fished a business card from his wallet and handed it to me. This is me. If you ever want to talk or need a reference, or if you want to show your work to Professor Evans, he's still teaching. He'd remember you. I took the card. Heavy paper, barely any design, just Adrian Thorne, architectural consultant. I don't have a portfolio anymore, I said. I sold most of my early stuff to pay bills. Then make a new one. For the first time all day, Adrian actually smiled. You're 29. RISD's furniture program accepts grad students. You could apply again. The idea felt huge, kind of unreal. I tucked it away in my mind for later, somewhere safe, somewhere not soaked in adrenaline and chemicals. Thank you, I said. For everything today. You didn't have to. Yeah, I did. He started to open his car door, then paused. For what it's worth, you're better off without them. All of them. Including me, probably. You weren't so bad, I said, and meant it. He drove away. I stood there until the sound of his engine faded, then went back inside, back to the finishing studio, back to that white oak table that had somehow become the center of my whole life. I ran my hand across it, feeling the glassy smoothness, the joints I knew would hold for a century. This table was proof. Proof I was good enough. Skilled enough. That I'd always been enough. I opened the ledger one last time, looked at the platinum ring nestled in the back pocket. Then I closed it up and put it in my desk drawer, where it could sit until I needed it. Tomorrow I'd call the realtor about my parents' house. Tomorrow I'd deal with the IRS. Tomorrow I'd start untangling myself from 11 years of lies. But today, right now, I was going to build something. I pulled on a clean shirt, tied my hair back, and headed to the milling bay. There was a stack of clear-grain cedar I'd been saving for something special. I picked out 6 boards, carried them to the finishing studio. An archway. Sienna had wanted one for her engagement party, but that wasn't why I was building it. Not for her, not for any of them. This one was for me. Something beautiful, something strong, something that marked the edge between the life I got trapped in and the one I was about to build. I measured twice, marked my cuts, and fired up the saw. The blade sang through cedar, sharp and clean, like a promise. 1 year later. The house sold in 45 days. I never went back inside. Just signed the papers and watched my parents pack up in silence. They moved to a smaller place across town. Someone told me my dad got a job at the hardware store. My mom stopped talking to me. Sienna's engagement fell apart, no surprise there, and she moved to Seattle. I didn't miss any of them. That $8,500 from selling the ring bought me 6 months to breathe, to figure things out without panicking about bills. After that, I listened to Adrian and emailed Professor Evans at RISD. He remembered me right away and wanted to see what I was working on. I sent him some photos of the white oak table, and not even half an hour later, my phone rang. That brings me to now, pulling my truck into the workshop lot, spotting Adrian's Audi already parked. We'd kept in touch over the past year, a little awkward at first, but then pretty steady. He shifted from acquaintance to friend, and then to collaborator. He had architecture clients who wanted custom pieces. I had the chops to build them. It worked. No family baggage, just a fair deal and respect on both sides. Adrian waited by the bay door, holding 2 coffees. Morning. I brought the plans for the West Hills project. Let me see. I took the coffee and the rolled-up blueprints, unrolling them on my workbench. Built-in bookshelves, 8 feet tall, white oak and walnut, nothing simple about the joinery. Exactly the kind of job I love. The timeline was loose. Adrian said the client cared more about quality than speed. That's my kind of client. We spent the next hour hashing out specs, arguing about wood, debating finishes. I used to dream about conversations like this, technical, creative, honest, with someone who saw me as an equal. When Adrian left, I just stood there in the finishing studio, breathing in sawdust and linseed oil. The white oak table sat in the middle of the room. Not for sale anymore. Now it was just a marker, a reminder of how far I'd come. My phone buzzed. A text, and I knew the number, Professor Evans. Hi Lyra, how are you? I'm teaching a weekend intensive on advanced joinery at RISD next month. Would you consider being a guest instructor? We could talk about grad school options while you're here. I read it twice. Then I typed back, I'd be honored. Before I called it a day, I drove past my parents' old house. The new owners had slapped on fresh paint, planted different shrubs, even put a basketball hoop in the driveway. It looked like a happy place now. I felt nothing. No sadness, no anger, no nostalgia. Just a little curiosity, like spotting a landmark from a life I used to live. I turned the truck around and headed back to the workshop. Back to the life I was building board by board, joint by joint. I had a bookshelf to design, a class to plan, a future to put together. And for the first time in 11 years, I had something I thought I'd lost for good. I had my time back. My skills, my name. I had myself.